I'm David Miller, and I've been practicing elder law and probate litigation in California for 18 years. My career has been a roller coaster of human emotion, from profound grief to exhilarating victories. But few cases have ever quite ripped at my soul like the story of Evelyn Hayes. I remember the day she walked into my office like it was yesterday. It was a crisp Tuesday morning in October, the kind of day where the Santa Ana winds whisper through the palm trees, carrying a hint of distant danger. Evelyn, a woman in her early 80s, frail and trembling, sat across from me, her hands clasped tightly around a worn leather purse. Her eyes, though clouded with tears, held a fire of indignation that immediately told me this wasn't just another will dispute. She spoke in hushed, broken sentences. Detailing how the life savings she had meticulously built over decades, the nest egg meant to provide her comfort and security in her twilight years, had simply vanished. Not lost to a bad investment or a market crash, but stolen. Systematically, deliberately, and with malice. The most shocking detail, the one that made my stomach clench and my resolve harden instantly, was that the perpetrator wasn't a stranger or a shady con artist. It was her own nephew, Mark, the very person she had entrusted with her power of attorney when her memory started to falter. Her dignity, her peace of mind, and over $1 million of her hard-earned money. That's what was at stake. Here's what you need to understand about the legal framework governing power of attorney in California, because it's the very foundation upon which Evelyn's trust was built and subsequently shattered. Under California Probate Code, Paragraph 4232, an agent acting under a power of attorney owes a fiduciary duty to the principal. This isn't just a suggestion, it's a solemn legal obligation, meaning the agent, in this case, Mark, must act solely in the best interests of his aunt, Evelyn, and avoid any conflicts of interest. Further, California Probate Code, Paragraph 4235, explicitly states that an agent must keep the principal's property separate from the agent's own property. This ensures transparency and prevents the kind of commingling that often precedes financial abuse. When an agent breaches this fiduciary duty, especially with fraudulent intent, they can be held liable not just for the stolen funds, but also for punitive damages under California Civil Code, Paragraph 3343, which aims to punish egregious behavior and deter others. These statutes are designed to protect vulnerable individuals like Evelyn from those who would exploit their trust and their diminished capacity. My job was to prove Mark had not only breached these duties, but had done so with the intent to defraud, essentially leveraging his aunt's trust and her legal vulnerability for his own personal gain. This case wasn't just about recovering money. It was about upholding the sanctity of trust and protecting the elderly from predatory acts. Mrs. Evelyn Hayes was, by all accounts, a remarkable woman. 82 years old, a retired school teacher who had dedicated her life to shaping young minds in the Santa Monica School District. She was meticulous, fiercely independent, and incredibly kind. Her home, a charming craftsman bungalow just a few blocks from the beach, was filled with books and antique furniture, each piece telling a story of a life well lived. She'd been a widow for nearly 15 years, managing her finances with precision, living comfortably but frugally on her pension and investments. Her only son had passed away several years prior, leaving her with no immediate family. This is where Mark, her nephew, entered the picture. Mark Hayes was in his early 50s, charming on the surface but with a history of underemployment and a perpetual need for money. He lived a few hours north, but after Evelyn's son died, he started visiting more often, offering to help with errands, fixing leaky faucets, and generally positioning himself as the dutiful relative. About 2 years before she came to me, Evelyn had started experiencing some very mild, early-stage memory issues. Nothing debilitating, but enough that her doctor suggested she get her affairs in order. Mark, ever so helpful, volunteered to take her to an attorney he knew to get her power of attorney drafted. She signed it in good faith, believing Mark would protect her interests. He became her financial agent. The emotional state she was in when she sat in my office was heartbreaking. A cocktail of betrayal, confusion, and profound shame. "How could I have been so foolish, attorney?" she'd whispered, her voice cracking. "He was like a son to me." The timeline of events was insidious. For the first 6 months after obtaining the POA, Mark was perfectly compliant. Then, slowly at first, money began to disappear. small cash withdrawals, then larger transfers from her savings to his personal checking account. 6 months prior to her visit, he had convinced her to transfer ownership of her beloved vacation condo in Palm Springs to him, ostensibly for easier management, with a deed showing a transfer for the sum of $1. She'd been living on a significantly reduced income for almost a year, confused why her bank balance was always so low. She'd always been so careful with money, and this unexplained deficit gnawed at her, leading her to finally confide in a longtime friend, who then urged her to seek legal counsel. Her vulnerability was palpable. A trusting elderly woman, isolated by circumstance and a manipulative family member, stripped of her financial security and, almost, her dignity. Taking her case wasn't even a question. My first step in the investigation phase was to secure every single financial document Evelyn could get her hands on: bank statements, investment records, property deeds, tax returns, anything and everything related to her assets for the past 3 years. What she provided was just a starting point, a thread to pull. It became immediately clear that Mark had been systematically draining her accounts, not in one fell swoop, but gradually so as not to immediately trigger alarms. The patterns were classic: cash withdrawals just under reporting thresholds, transfers labeled loan repayment or gift. I knew I needed professional help to untangle the financial web Mark had spun. I brought in Sarah Jenkins, a forensic accountant known for her meticulous work and ability to follow the most convoluted money trails. She was sharp, unflappable, and had a nose for fraud. Simultaneously, I engaged Detective Miller, a seasoned private investigator with a reputation for digging up digital evidence and background intelligence that often eluded traditional methods. Our detective work began. Sarah started with the bank statements, meticulously categorizing every transaction. She found numerous unexplained transfers from Evelyn's accounts to Mark's, often followed by large purchases by Mark, luxury goods, expensive dining, and even a down payment on a new car. The property records confirmed the quitclaim deed on Evelyn's Palm Springs condo, transferring a property worth over $400,000 for a nominal sum of $1. This, on its own, was a glaring red flag for elder abuse. We faced immediate obstacles. Mark's attorney, Richard Sterling, a formidable opponent with a reputation for aggressive, often ethically dubious defense tactics, stonewalled us at every turn. He delayed providing discovery documents, objected to every request, and painted Evelyn as a senile old woman who simply forgot she had gifted her nephew these sums. His strategy was to portray Evelyn as confused and unreliable, and Mark as a caring nephew who was simply accepting his aunt's generosity. But I wasn't buying it. We pushed harder. Detective Miller, meanwhile, was doing his own brand of detective work. He delved into Mark's digital footprint, looking for any communication that might shed light on his intentions. He managed to obtain Mark's phone records and found an interesting pattern of calls and texts between Mark and a real estate agent around the time the condo was transferred. He also found social media posts where Mark was suddenly flaunting new wealth, taking lavish trips, and buying expensive items, all while Evelyn's accounts dwindled. Our strategic thinking process was to build an undeniable paper trail of the financial abuse and then to expose Mark's fraudulent intent directly. We needed something that went beyond mere suspicion. We needed proof that he knew he was stealing and that he actively concealed his actions. The pieces of evidence began to pile up: the extensive bank transfers, the fraudulent condo transfer, and Mark's sudden unexplained wealth. But the biggest breakthrough was yet to come. Then came the discovery, the moment that truly cracked the case wide open. Sarah Jenkins, after weeks of painstaking work, called me into her office. My heart raced when I saw the series of flowcharts and spreadsheets laid out on her desk, meticulously detailing every penny. She'd not only traced all the transfers from Evelyn's accounts to Mark's, but she'd also uncovered hidden offshore accounts and a shell corporation Mark had set up in Belize, used to funnel a significant portion of the stolen funds, particularly proceeds from the eventual sale of Evelyn's Palm Springs condo, which Mark had quickly sold after the $1 transfer. The sale was executed through an intermediary account and then wired to Belize, making it almost untraceable without Sarah's forensic expertise. But the real smoking gun came from Detective Miller. He'd managed to legally recover a discarded mobile phone Mark had sold online a few months prior, and through careful data recovery, Found a voicemail Mark had left for a friend. The audio was clear, undeniable. Mark, in a celebratory tone, boasted, "Aunt Evie has no idea. I'm practically set for life. She thinks she's just a little forgetful, but I'm cleaning her out." The impact of hearing that recording for the first time was visceral. The chill that went down my spine wasn't just from the cold, calculated betrayal, but from the realization of how incredibly difficult it would be for Mark to deny his intent now. This wasn't just a breach of fiduciary duty, it was outright premeditated fraud and elder abuse. The evidence was legally significant because it proved intent. Mark hadn't just been careless or mistaken, he had deliberately and maliciously exploited his aunt's trust and her diminishing capacity. It transformed the case from a difficult dispute over gifts into an open-and-shut case of criminal-level financial exploitation. When I played the recording for Evelyn, she didn't react with anger, but with a deep, shuddering sob. The last fragile thread of hope that perhaps her nephew hadn't truly meant to harm her snapped. "He took everything, attorney," she whispered, her voice barely audible, the shame and hurt palpable in the air. My determination, already strong, solidified into an unyielding resolve to see justice done for this gentle, wronged woman. The courtroom drama unfolded in Department 23 of the Los Angeles Superior Court. The air was thick with tension, a palpable weight pressing down on everyone present. Judge Eleanor Vance, a woman known for her sharp intellect, piercing gaze, and no-nonsense approach, presided over the bench. I watched Mark, seated beside his attorney, Richard Sterling, trying to project an air of calm confidence that simply didn't ring true. Our key witness, Sarah Jenkins, the forensic accountant, took the stand. She was poised and professional, guiding the court through the labyrinthine financial transactions with absolute clarity. Using blow-up exhibits of her flowcharts and bank statements, she meticulously detailed every transfer, every hidden account, every discrepancy. She pointed to the $1 transfer of the Palm Springs condo and then, with devastating precision, showed the subsequent sale of that same condo for $420,000, with the proceeds vanishing into Mark's shell corporation in Belize. Sterling's cross-examination was predictably aggressive. He tried to discredit Sarah, suggesting her interpretations were biased, that she was making assumptions, that Evelyn herself had authorized these transactions verbally. But Sarah, armed with irrefutable data, remained calm. "My analysis is based solely on the documented financial records, Mr. Sterling," she stated, her voice even. "The money trail is unambiguous." His attacks proved futile against her facts. Then came the moment I'd been preparing for, my cross-examination of Mark Hayes. He swaggered to the stand, trying to maintain his charming facade. "Mr. Hayes," I began, my voice clear and steady, "you testified earlier that your aunt willingly gifted you these funds, correct?" Mark, looking directly at the jury, puffed out his chest. "Yes, she loved me very much. She was always generous." "And the Palm Springs condo? Was that also a gift?" I pressed, holding up the $1 quitclaim deed. "She wanted me to have it, attorney. She said she didn't need it anymore." Mark replied, a slight smirk playing on his lips. My gaze locked with his. "Mr. Hayes," I said, my voice dropping, "did you ever, at any point, tell anyone that Aunt Evie has no idea? I'm practically set for life. She thinks she's just a little forgetful, but I'm cleaning her out?" Sterling immediately jumped to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. Lack of foundation." Judge Vance, however, looked directly at Mark, whose face had gone pale. "Overruled. Mr. Hayes, answer the question." Mark hesitated, his confident demeanor crumbling. Sweat beaded on his forehead. I don't recall ever saying anything like that," he stammered, avoiding my gaze. "Your Honor," I said, turning to the bench, "permission to play Exhibit J." The courtroom went utterly silent. You could hear a pin drop. Sterling's face drained of all color. He knew exactly what was coming, and he slumped back into his chair, looking utterly defeated. The bailiff hit play, and Mark's own voice, clear as day, filled the room. "Aunt Evie has no idea. I'm practically set for life. She thinks she's just a little forgetful, but I'm cleaning her out." The recording played for a full 10 seconds, each word a hammer blow. The jury's eyes, previously focused on me or the screen, were now fixed on Mark. He visibly sagged on the stand, his shoulders slumping, his face a mask of shame and terror. The smirk was gone, replaced by a desperate, trapped expression. He had been caught, unequivocally, in his own web of deceit. And the resolution came swiftly and decisively. Judge Vance did not mince words. In a scathing ruling that echoed through the silent courtroom, she found Mark Hayes unequivocally guilty of elder financial abuse, fraud, and a flagrant breach of fiduciary duty. Her voice, usually measured, carried a distinct tone of outrage as she described Mark's actions as despicable and a profound betrayal of trust. The specific outcome was clear. Mark was ordered to pay full restitution of all stolen assets, which, with interest and the proceeds from the Palm Springs condo sale, amounted to approximately $1. $2 million. But the judge wasn't done. Citing the egregious nature of the abuse, the premeditation, and Mark's intentional malice, she levied an additional $2 million in punitive damages against him. Furthermore, Mark was stripped of his power of attorney, permanently barred from ever holding a fiduciary role for anyone, and the fraudulent transfer of the Palm Springs condo was reversed, effectively returning it to Evelyn's estate. The consequences for Mark were severe. Judge Vance strongly recommended to the district attorney's office that criminal charges be pursued, and the last I heard, he was indeed facing felony elder abuse charges. His reputation was, quite rightly, in tatters. He initially declared bankruptcy, hoping to escape the financial judgment, but judgments for fraud and elder abuse are typically non-dischargeable, meaning he'll be hounded by collection efforts for the rest of his life. For Evelyn, the victory was profound and deeply emotional. She sat beside me, her hand trembling in mine, tears streaming down her face. Tears of relief, of vindication, not sadness. "You gave me my life back, attorney," she choked out, her voice filled with a gratitude that humbles me to this day. The judgment was secured, and while it would take time, her financial security was restored. Mark, on the other hand, became a pariah, isolated by his own greed. And here's what I learned from this case, something that resonates deeply with me every time I take on a new client. The insidious nature of financial abuse by family members is often far more damaging than that perpetrated by strangers. Trust, meant to be a bond, can so easily be weaponized by those closest to us. The broader legal lesson for anyone watching is critical. A power of attorney is one of the most powerful legal documents you can grant, bestowing immense authority. With that power comes an even greater responsibility, and the law protects those for whom that trust is violated. The system, while sometimes slow, can and does provide recourse for victims of such betrayal. You need to be vigilant for warning signs. If you notice sudden changes in a loved one's financial behavior, like unexplained withdrawals or transfers, or if an elder suddenly becomes isolated from friends and family, these are huge red flags. Be wary of unexpected property transfers or reluctance to discuss finances. If you're facing a situation where you suspect a power of attorney is being abused, here's what you need to know. Act immediately. Time is of the essence when assets are being drained. Seek legal counsel from an attorney specializing in elder law. Document everything. Dates, amounts, conversations. Don't hesitate because the longer you wait, the more difficult it becomes to recover what's been lost. This case, like so many others, offered me a stark professional insight into the darker side of human nature, into the desperation and greed that can drive people to unimaginable acts. But it also reaffirmed my faith in the justice system and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. 18 months later, Evelyn Hayes is doing better. The trauma of the betrayal still stings, a deep wound that will likely never fully heal, but her financial security has been restored. Her home is safe, her bills are paid, and she's found a measure of peace, supported by her friends and a new, trustworthy financial advisor. She even joined a book club again, something she hadn't done in years. This, right here, is why I do this job. To fight for the vulnerable. To ensure that justice, even if it feels delayed, ultimately prevails for those who cannot fight for themselves. It's about more than just money. It's about restoring dignity and validating trust. Drop your questions in the comments below. Have you or a loved one faced similar challenges with power of attorney? I read every single one. And trust me, I've got plenty more stories to tell, stories of broken trusts and triumphant comebacks, right here on this channel.